performance. And Humanities in Medicine is basically this kind of program where they bring in artists to shed light on the human side of medicine. So they'll bring in artists to kind of talk about what it's really like from the patient's perspective. So I performed for their medical students and a lot of other nurses and doctors, which was really cool. And actually a representative from their psychiatric hospital, Zucker Hillside Hospital, attended that performance and then had me return the next year to perform with their Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Health and Pharmacy. And then most recently I performed at Off-Broadway at the United Solo Theater Festival on Theater Row in New York. So it's kind of just grown over the years, and I'm really excited to be able to do a few bits today because I haven't performed it since October.
That's so exciting. How did you get started writing it? Have you written other like non-solo pieces? Because I feel like that's such a distinct beast to write a one-woman show.
I've always been writing has always been a strength of mine, but I had never written a multi-person show or a solo show. I had been going through really dark times with my health, both mentally and physically, and it was really bad for several years. And it had kind of gotten to this like major peak in around 2014 with my PTSD, and I was just really lost. I had been in mental health treatment for a few times, like residential treatment. And actually, a lot of the show is based off journal entries from my time in treatment that I kind of revamped and dramatized for the stage. It kind of was, for me, the most healing part of it. I've been to every kind of doctor. I've been in therapy for many years, but writing it was kind of the most beautiful parts of the recovery and the healing for me. It's almost like I don't really know how it happened, if that makes sense. Like I wrote about it out of my frustration and need to like purge myself of this pain and suffering I had been through, and somehow it came out in a positive way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then to bring that to all these different audiences, I can only imagine that effect would continue and grow for you, but then also then all the other people that get to see this show. It's so fantastic.
Yeah, it's been great. And I went to, I'm not sure if you know who the playwright and screenwriter Hallie Pfeiffer is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but she ran a kind of a screenwriting and playwriting workshop in Denver, and I took it with her and I revamped the show. And this was about almost 2 years ago. And I really made some edits because I wrote the show now, I'm 29. I wrote the show now, when I was like 22, and a lot of things have changed in the course of my reflection of what these health problems mean to me and what recovery looks like. So she really helped me to kind of make major edits to the show to kind of reflect my new thoughts about my past and how my past has affected my present.
That's fantastic. Well, should we jump in to see these so that we can then speak more to that?
Yes, absolutely. Let me try to make sure that my laptop is like, can you see me? Or should I put the laptop farther back?
I can see you. We can't see your feet, but we're pretty much getting pretty much all of you, like down to your knees. So yeah.
Fine, yeah. The feet, it's totally fine because I am just wearing socks and there's nothing special to see. Okay, great. Hello, Anna. I'll be taking on your case. My name is Dr. Rectal. Now there seems to be serious inflammation in your... Yes, that's rectal. Yes, it's R-E-C-T-I-L. Rectal. Yes, Miss Snapp, like rectum. Yes, I've heard that before. Now about the scopes we just did. Yes, I know. Yes, I'm a gastroenterologist. Now there seems to be severe patchy inflammation all throughout your... Yes, I've heard that joke before. Yes, and that one. And that one too. Yes, all those. So if we could just get... Listen, I didn't go into the field because my name... What we really need to focus on is the Crohn's disease. Yes, there was inflammation in your rectum. No, I didn't think of myself when I saw it. You need some more rest. Yes, Miss Snapp. Okay, so there's something really personal I'd love to share with all of you, and it's really personal to me, but I'd love to share it with all you lovely people. It's a poem about rectal foam. Oh, that was a poem about, oh, you got it, okay, I'll just start. Not a cream or a gel or an ointment for Anna. Not a tablet or a capsule or a pill for she. This young woman was faced with something much larger, much bigger, that only one special hole would fit, you see. It wasn't a lotion or a suppository at all, but it was taken care of in one beautiful motion I do recall. Lying on my left side with my right leg bent and my butt angled northeast in the air, I shook that bottle for 5 to 10 seconds vigorously as the directions made me swear. It was bubbly and white, and with little delight did I insert that wild enema of the night. Hands back on. Now time for sleep. I have dreams of brightness, of passing, of powerful release. Goodbye, inflammation. Goodbye, sinful disease. Goodbye, fair steroid enema. I'll see you next eve. Maybe there was a part of me that wanted to stay sick. Maybe it was easier to be stuck in a dark hole than to fight my way to the light. Because there is no elevator to healing, to freedom from your demons, to true self-awareness and happiness. You have to take the stairs. And man, did those stairs feel steep? So incredibly steep that no amount of strength could get me to the top. But I didn't know why I was stuck. Something changed in 2010 and I didn't even realize it. I didn't know that the most earth-shattering trauma of all is potentially what caused the rest of my world to unravel, for my body to fail me. I didn't make the connection that when something so horrific happens to you, the rest of you shuts down. It stops functioning. It closes itself off to the world. It's no longer the same. I'm at a war with the world, with my mind, with my body. One moment I'm fine, then boom, I run to the kitchen, collapse onto the floor and inch my way into the corner so that nothing or no one can scare me from behind. No, stop, help. I keep repeating those words over and over again, but it's not doing anything. I'm not safe, and I never will be. For the love of God, someone help me, I can't breathe. No, don't touch me. I can't even fathom the feeling of another human body against mine. Get away from me. No, I don't know how I'm feeling. I feel nothing. I feel numb. I can't see or hear anything. But then I realize, no matter how hard I hold myself, the world is still around me. Anyone can touch me. Anyone can hurt me. Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Guys, if anyone can turn on your picture and applause the way we applause here in way, show Anna our love and support. That'd be awesome. Let's all do it. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Wow.
Wow. You. That was really powerful, Anna. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're very talented.
Thank you so much.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. I don't even know where to begin. Oh my gosh.
I had like tears in my eyes, and then now I'm just processing. Yeah, it's hard to talk straight away. Really, maybe we should actually, neighbors, maybe we should take a moment, like 20-30 seconds, and just be silent and just feel what we feel. I think that would be a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Just be together.
What I feel now after this poem.
Mm-hmm. So we have a first question from a neighbor, like, how does it feel from the inside?
Oh, how do I feel? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am constantly surprised by, even though it's been like years of distance from certain things that have been hard for me, it is very easy for me to go back into that place when I use my own words to express it. Especially like, you know, given like a flashback scene, like what it's like to have a PTSD flashback, a post-traumatic stress disorder flashback. It's such a real and scary thing, and it is so visceral and so overwhelming that when I really put myself into the words that I'm saying, all of a sudden I'm kind of like transported to that, not in like a triggering way or anything, but just in a, like, I feel like I can connect to it really easily. I mean, and on the other hand, like with the more comedic bits, that part is really important for me to do throughout the show, is bring in comedy, because the first time I wrote it, like the first draft of it, I sent to a mentor of mine, a theater mentor of mine, and he basically met with me for lunch and said, you can't put this on, there's nothing funny in it, and no audience is going to want to sit through just like an hour of tears. And I think that's how my show strengthened, is that I was able to put in comedy. And those were just two little bits of it, but it kind of is woven throughout, and it really does save me too in the show. I think it would be even harder for me to perform the whole thing so many times if there was no bit of like light or laughter in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to see like my reflection, and you're so beautiful and powerful, you know, and full when after you're doing it and when you're doing it. So it's just, you know, I feel it with my skin and my body and my subconscious and whatever. I just feel how there's some incredible force in you doing it and in you sharing this with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I was actually just talking to a student the other day about what the phrase silver lining means. And it was something they hadn't heard. And I was thinking a lot about how I almost gave this example, but didn't, but that I went through so many years of suffering and pain, both physically and mentally. And the silver lining is that I have my show from it. Without that experience, I wouldn't have been able to write about it. I think it's made me a more empathetic human and actor to have gone through things. And I'm actually really, it's in a weird way, I'm like really grateful I went through a lot of the things I went through. You know, it's been Crohn's disease, Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, autoimmune pancreatitis, E. coli, C. diff, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, PTSD, I have bipolar disorder, anxiety. There's so many things, but I'm kind of grateful for it.
Wow. And what a beautiful metaphor with what's happening in the world right now. I think that we'll all be feeling this way after this tragedy that is happening, you know?
Yeah, it's, yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Chrissy.
I was just going to ask, you know, how you performed this in so many different venues in different ways. And I mean, I don't think that you mentioned Zoom before. So I assume this is a new one. And I know, you know, we got to talk with the people from Theater Without Theater the other day, which was so wonderful, speaking about the evolution of theater now that we're all sort of inside. And I feel like with this show particularly, that, I mean, I felt just from those 4 bits that you did that there is this strong theme of like isolation versus connection. I was just wondering how it felt to you to do some pieces of it over Zoom like this.
Yeah, it's different. You know, I once heard a fact from a voice and speech teacher in acting school that the reason that live performance and live music, for instance, like going to concerts, is such a emotional experience sometimes, is because the vibrations from the sounds that the performers let out of their mouth or out of their instruments actually vibrate in our skin.
Oh, yeah.
We can actually, without us knowing, we feel the vibrations from those sounds in our bodies, which creates this kind of physical and emotional experience. And so sometimes, you know, as a performer, you can feel the audience's presence there, like either the laughter or any kind of reaction. So it's different over Zoom because you can't really have that same.
And I have to tell you, I feel your vibration like full time with the wholeness of my body and, you know, the wholeness of my heart. I don't know if you guys agree. You can comment in chat or just, you know, unmute yourself and share with us if you are feeling. But I was definitely feeling it like, you know, over and across. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're more connected than we think.
Yes, we have from Melanie S. The vibrations are reaching all the way to Dubai, which is.
Oh yeah, she's in Dubai. That's my friend Melanie. I didn't realize she was here.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, that's a fantastic point, is like, I mean, yeah, we're not in the same room, but Fyodor, you're totally right. I mean, I certainly felt as an audience member that, yeah, it was incredibly effective.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's cool to know that there are ways to reach people and to have human connection in a day and age of internet, that, you know, if this kind of pandemic was happening 25 years ago, we would not have the same kind of opportunities for human connection. So it is kind of something to be really grateful for, that at least we do have this. We have this Zoom call, you know?
Yeah, that's another silver lining for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if you can speak to, you know, some of the issues that you have gone through and the things that you've overcome. I think that, you know, partly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that some of them are a little bit isolating just because of the preconceived notions that people have about these issues and like stigma surrounding mental health and things like that. And I wonder if you could speak to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember the first time I performed it in Maryland, so many people came up to me afterwards saying, you know, I've been through that too, or, oh my God, you know, this has been kind of a recurring theme. People will come up to me and say that. But I've noticed that it's a lot easier for people to say me too about the physical health conditions. You know, it's, for instance, like when a diabetic needs their insulin, people are like, yeah, no problem, a diabetic needs their insulin. But I take antipsychotics for my bipolar disorder every day, and it is not considered the same level of absolute need. You know, the way it is portrayed in the media, for instance, you know, when there's a mass shooting by someone who does something so horrific to other people, we automatically put, oh, they're mentally ill. When really that's not. Yes, I agree, they are not okay if they are committing such a horrible crime, but also it's misrepresenting mental illness. Mental illness can look like, or mental health issues in general can look like everyone around you. I know so many people who struggle with anxiety or depression or an eating disorder or drug addiction. I know plenty of people, maybe also from being in treatment, but it doesn't look one certain way. And it affects so many people. And for some reason, it's still not legitimized as the same level of importance as it is if I have Crohn's disease. So I think that was kind of, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I think that was kind of that was kind of the hardest part, is like, I'm revealing a lot about myself that is about my mental state. And not only is it about physical illness, but both how mental illness and physical illness affected my psyche. And it's like, it was kind of a bold step for me to do it in front of like family, friends, people I don't know. But it's also been kind of a gift, because I'm like, so many people have thanked me and have said things like, oh my God, I didn't know anyone else was feeling that way. And that has been honestly the greatest gift from this show, has not been like the performing it the writing it, it's been like connecting with other people and hearing someone else go like, thank you. Like I felt so alone, and it's good to know someone else has gone through it.
For sure. And I mean, I think that doing this type of work and then the subsequent conversations that come from it, that's kind of what it's going to take to get rid of this misplaced stigma. Yeah, just knowing that there are so many people who are dealing with this same or similar issues. I think that's so meaningful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's I wish it was different the way that we handle these things, because like I said, so many people struggle with this on a spectrum. It's like, it's not always what I always think, like, I just saw the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for the first time, like a couple months ago. And I actually didn't really take to the movie because the way that I've been in mental health, like residential mental health treatment centers, and it's not, you see some crazy shit there, but sometimes the portrayal of what mental illness looks like can be so false. Like, I just wish it was more real. What it looked like was people really struggling to find themselves, to deal with a chemical imbalance, to deal with self-love. There's so many reasons. Sometimes it was purely situational. Someone faced a trauma or lost their job, or they fell into a depression, or whatever it is. There's so many reasons why people struggle with their mental health. And I think that the mental health struggles I went through were even harder than the physical health. I wouldn't wish them either of those on any person, but PTSD and bipolar were far scarier for me than being in the hospital for Crohn's or pancreatitis or any of the other things.
For sure. And I'm sure that it doesn't help when there is this stigma attached to it. That's just an added burden on something that's already such a huge challenge. It's so important for us all to work to dispel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something to say that, the world is so subjective. Like what we think is normal and what we think is the world is just an agreement of the majority. But then even with like the insights and the discoveries, they all come from people who see things differently, and who do not agree to the status quo. So I can't express how important I think this is for us all to share our truths and the way we see the world and what we are going through, and to include this into the picture and the norm, because the norm is everything that there exists is a norm, everything that there is place for everything. And once we, I think, are ready, and present to open our eyes to the reality of these multiple puzzles, that all only when we see them clearly, we can put them together into, this big puzzle and understand better the universe and each other and our future and all of these things. So to me, Anna, you're just like an angel today. And right now, helping us humans to open our eyes to yet another, such an important perspectives on what our world and what we are actually, because everything that it's, I think everyone that's in single one of us is in everyone. And that's the new kind of thinking, we learn, again, we learn from what's happening right now, that we are all part of each other.
Very well said. Yeah, I think it definitely goes back to like all of us having struggled with mental health at one point in our lives. Doesn't have to be mental illness, just struggling with your mental health. I can say with a lot of confidence, I'm sure most of us are struggling with our mental health these days, just trying to figure out our way in a time that is so unknown, with uncharted territory and something that no one's ever been through before in the modern world. You're obviously going to be dealing with some mental health struggles, whether that's just because you want to see your friends and you miss them, or you lost your job, or like whatever the crazy things that are happening, your company's going down, things like that. So if people didn't believe in mental health before, or mental health awareness and advocacy, they might think about it differently now, I think.
Absolutely. We have a question coming in from Sarah to the chat. Sarah, do you want to turn your microphone on and read it, or would you prefer that we read it? I'm assuming that yes, okay, so we can read it. All right, so the question is, now that we are all living with this imposed isolation, what advice do you have about how we get through this and take care of ourselves and each other?
Wow, that's a good question, because that's something that I'm still trying to figure out myself. I know that also we're in really different situations. I came home to Maryland to quarantine with my family instead of New York. So I have my parents with me, which is really great, because I think I would feel very much alone if I was still in New York, kind of in my basement apartment. But I think a thing that I've been seeing a lot, a trend, which I'm really loving, is that there are all these, I think when quarantine first started, I was like, okay, I started working on a second one-woman show. I was trying to get more things done than I normally ever do. And I think giving ourselves the space to feel upset might be the wisest thing to do. Like if you're, I think my mom used to say to me, like, I used to get really homesick when I was little. And like, even when I was like older in middle school and high school, I got really homesick. And my mom would say, like, let yourself feel homesick. And I think that's something that we don't do. When we feel something like anxiety or sadness, we're often like, I don't want to feel this, push it away, as opposed to really letting yourself feel it. Because often if you let yourself feel it, it might go away faster, or ease up faster. It's not going to go away, but I think as much as you can kind of check in with people too. I'm trying to, although I feel overwhelmed by the use of my phone and computer sometimes in quarantine, I think, even just sending a message to someone, let them know you're thinking about them, Zoom parties, things like that. But this is honestly a question that I have for myself too, that I'm trying to figure out, because every day there's a new change to this quarantine rules, and every day we're learning new updates. So I'm not sure if that was the greatest answer, but I'm definitely still figuring.
Absolutely beautiful to my mind. And again, now that we are doing, I don't know what's the number of this meeting in a row, in our global neighborhood, maybe number 10 already, And I really feel how the puzzle starts to connect. And looking back to our meeting about meditation, I feel like, and what I'm learning from Headspace meditation and from Andy, not running away, like what you said, I think is so beautiful, not running away from it, but acknowledging, even, in simple things like you're sitting there meditating, trying not to think, and then you're thinking, and then you're not fighting it. You tap it, you label it, you say, oh, I'm thinking, in this acceptance, then it can go away, And also another theory that I have about signals, and all the signals come for a reason. They want to tell us something, they want us to pay attention to something. So this feeling of loneliness and this feeling of worrying, like we should accept it. If we run away from it, or try to get ourselves distracted, this is like, a fire alarm buzzing, and we are ignoring it. Because it's like an annoying sound, but we have to look behind what is it signaling us, I think, and doing it together. Again, your second point, I'm just like returning this back to you, I think is so important, because we we all hear this fire alarm. There must be a fire. What is the fire? How does it look like? What can we do to protect each other and ourselves?
Yeah,
that's a really great point, Fyodor. And as far as the connections with Global Neighborhood go, I think, you're absolutely right. I was thinking about that as well. And also, just for everybody listening, be sure and tune in on Monday at 2, because we're going to have a wonderful mental health professional with us, Dr. Loujain El-Haji, and very interested to hear her thoughts as well on this, for a different perspective on mental health and the crisis. We have another question in the chat. Veronica, do you want to come on camera and read your question, or would you prefer that we read it?
Come on, guys.
I can read it, but please without video.
That's totally fine. Whatever you're comfortable with.
you spend so much energy when you read it, a poem. How you are recovering this energy?
How do I recover this energy? Yeah, I do find that performing the show is probably the most exhausting thing in the world. Like, I somehow come out of this show not knowing like what I even did, and I think it just takes a lot of emotional energy. I do normally, I didn't today, but before I actually perform the show, I go through like a major warm up, like a physical warm up, but also just like mentally warming up, like getting myself into the state of being that I have to be in to put on it's a 1 hour show. And also afterwards, it has happened sometimes where I just like cry when I come off stage. Like it's been different every time, but I actually need to be in a better habit of like finding a good cool down for myself, because they'll say that a lot to actors, like you should have a warm up and a cool down, especially if you're in a performance that's, emotionally, really highly emotionally demanding. That's actually a process I haven't really figured out much yet, and something that I probably should, because I think it takes a bigger toll on me than I realized, because I think at this point I've been like, I've been performing this for 4 years, like whatever. And then every time I'm tired. Yeah.
That's a fantastic point. And also, of course, the fact that it is a solo show. I mean, you're kind of responsible for everything there. You don't have your fellow actors to rely on to kind of give you back some energy as well. So I imagine it has its own unique set of demands.
It does. Trying to command the stage on your own is a very tricky thing. And I think it's just gotten better over time, because it's such a skill that I'm working on. It's not, it really comes down to a lot of like presence and breathing and taking the audience in and letting them go on the ride with you. Because if you don't, you can just kind of be talking at them. Mm-hmm. And you kind of want it to be this kind of like mutual experience of like, hey, I'm telling a story, but I want you here with me for it. And I want to like feel your breath back and forth. I want to feel this connection. And that was kind of one of the biggest notes I got from my most recent director of this most recent iteration. I had a new director, and I went through a run through like 2 days before the show, and she was like, you weren't breathing that entire time. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I was not. And then the show got like a million times better. Like the next run that we did right after that was a million times better, because I simply was breathing, something that we all forget to do. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Funny how something so basic is like the first thing that goes when we become like nervous or energized or something. It's like,
yeah, I know. And I'm sure that so many people can speak to that. Like I saw a meme recently that was like, stop tensing up your neck. And I was like, oh my God, how did you know? Like
see me through.
You see me, or like stop slouching, or it's like always your shoulders, or like you're holding tension in your pelvis, or like something. Like everyone's always, we do it. It's an emotional protective thing,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that just speaks to what we've been talking about with the fact that, everything that's going on mentally and emotionally is tied to our bodies as well.
Oh yeah. The mind-body connection is something. I remember when I first started writing the show, I was trying to either write it just about my physical health or just about my mental health. Mm-hmm. And I realized that was not the way to go. There was no way for me to tell the story of Crohn's disease without the story of bipolar. And, one of the things I learned from a gastroenterologist who was more on the holistic side of medicine was that the same neurotransmitters that are released in the brain are released in the gut. That's why there's the saying, your gut feeling. Mm-hmm. Your brain, like your gut is like the brain of your body. And so that's why sometimes you feel, you get butterflies when you're nervous, or sometimes you feel sick when you're depressed. One of the questions I asked in the show was I depressed because I was sick, or was I sick because I was depressed? That's a new actually addition to the show that came in the last couple of years, because I think in my first iteration of it, I wasn't acknowledging the connection as much. And then in my edits of the show, I kind of started to link being sexually assaulted when I was in my late teens to all my health problems starting, and how actually all of those things all of my physical health got worse after I was raped. And I didn't make that connection until years later, but it was just kind of the way it went.
Yeah, and I see another horribly unfortunate connection in the fact that, we've been talking about how mental health issues are so stigmatized, but also there's a lot of stigma around rape and sexual assault. And in both cases, I feel like that stigma is just absolutely doing such a disservice to people who suffer from these issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it feeds into each other.
Yeah, and just, you know, I'm so happy that the Me Too movement has been such a powerful thing for so many, especially women, because it is focused more on women. But, you know, I hate that I did this photo shoot with a photographer. It was kind of like an artistic thing. And it was, because 2020 is the 10-year anniversary of me being assaulted. And it was this photo shoot with different signs. And the first sign was, I was 19 years old. And then each sign kind of had something like, it had Me Too, or it had a fact about how often every 73 seconds American is sexually assaulted. There were these different signs that I was holding, and I actually posted on Instagram, and it was public on my profile. And the number of comments from men that I didn't know who search for the Me Too hashtag and then try to attack the posts. Someone asked me how long, the comments are crazy, but a lot of men who I didn't know, who I had to block, who were saying stuff like, well, like, why didn't you just say no? Or, you know, like, stop whining about it. Think crazy comments like that. And it's just like, there are people out there who really do believe this about women's stories. When they say I was raped, it's not always believed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels shocking that someone can still hold views that are so reprehensible and so utterly false and disgusting that, you know, I'm getting those horrible butterflies in my stomach just hearing you talk about those troll comments.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's of course exactly the reason why we need Me Too and why we need these global conversations to kind of expand that discussion and maybe just, you know, show someone who hasn't thought about it that that's not the way to think about it.
Yeah, and another thing, guys, is I think, again, like catching the signals. And it's way better that these people who think it say it, because then we can at least know that they are there. We can at least start to, you know, to know that what we're saying is heard, and to know that there is something to, you know, to fight against. So that, I think it's wonderful, and I think it's wonderful, again, to just like acknowledge this truth and to understand it and not to take it personally. But you are speaking here for all the women that have gone through this, yeah. And this, you know, kind of dark force that we're seeing is everything that we have to deal with, and it works on the like this micro level of each and every comment, you know, and in just like the society thinking it as a giant in general. So I think it's absolutely beautiful, and again, just know that you have our support and we have the support of each other. I think this makes us so much stronger than any of these comments or all these comments put together. You know, just like one statement and one post like that, or one show like that, you know.
My chat just popped up. There was one last question. I know we probably have to wrap up, but
there are a few actually. I see 3. We have one from Nico, one from Veronica, and one from Savannah.
Yeah, guys, would you like to ask it, Nika? I know you can. Oh, is he here?
He's here. Unmute yourself, Nico. No, click the unmute. Here.
Oh.
Nope, you're still muted. There you go. Good.
Okay. Hey there, Anna, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, you know, I'm an actor and people often ask me, like, how do you, especially on stage, like, how do you night after night perform these like huge, horrible feelings, you know, and not basically like have a breakdown? And what I tell people is that the character, is that like the process of rehearsing, you make a sort of other person that you step into so that you can safely like go to those places. That's my process. That's how I explain it. Do you find that having performed this show for so many years, the words feel like a character that you step into, or does it still feel like you are just revealing yourself every time?
That's a really great question. I think it does feel like a different person now, to be honest. I'm really in a different spot mentally, emotionally, and physically than I was several years ago. And I think also, honestly, with trauma therapy was all about kind of like bringing yourself back to the reality and to the present and grounding yourself. So many like common like yoga tools we use, like even just like using your senses to like bring yourself back to the present, was so important in remembering like, okay, you're safe. This is not you. You are okay. And so I think having that actually just like almost training and therapy to be like reminding myself that I am not these illnesses and they do not define me, that I am not my trauma. I am more than that. It's one puzzle piece in the puzzle that makes up me. It helps me go into the performance knowing that I can just be like, okay, this is my past. And I kind of put it in a little box and that's where it is.
We have another question in the chat from Veronica. Do you want to unmute yourself, Veronica, and ask your question? Maybe not. I can read it though. Veronica says, I didn't understand everything in this poem, but I felt all, thanks to you. What do you think when you read the poem? How did you learn to convey emotions? Do you have actors in your family?
I do not have actors in my family, or that could be debatable. We're all kind of actors in my family, but no actors in my family. Honestly, I started therapy when I was 10 and I was already struggling with like mental health stuff when I was 10. And I think going to therapy really helped me be more emotionally aware of myself and of my feelings and of other people's feelings and kind of my day-to-day thoughts and feelings. I don't know, in terms of like learning how to convey emotions, I think that was a big part of it. I was going in every week for like years to talk about my own feelings and analyze them. So when I have to do that on stage, it feels like there's always a challenge when you approach a character, like, or any kind of acting, you know, any role. But I find it, you know, when we were in acting school and they'd have us journal about our emotions or reflect, it came second nature to me. It was hard at some points, but there were some people who had never done that in their lives. And it was really hard for them to open up. And for me, I'm like, every family dinner we had was like a therapy session. We were always talking about our feelings. I was in therapy at age 10. So I think it was just kind of almost like second nature to me at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to convey an emotion if you don't really understand what you're feeling, I think. So having that background seems so key to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have one more question from Savannah. Do you have any advice for persons going into healthcare professions? What do you want to see or not see from your doctors? That's a great question.
That's such a good question. I do touch in my show about like bedside manner from doctors and like the healthcare system and stuff. And it's not like the biggest theme of it, but I do touch on it. I think that I've had some wonderful doctors. I've had some really great doctors who I'm really grateful for, but I've also had some doctors who talked to me as if I was, first of all, as if I understood all of this medical terminology that I wouldn't know unless I went to med school. And also didn't talk to me as if they were delivering me a diagnosis. Back in 2015, I went to a doctor who was an integrated medicine doctor, and he knew his stuff. Like I can't argue with that. Like he knew so much about approaching medicine in a holistic way, and it really helped me physically. But every time I saw him, he barely looked me in the eye. He would use his little laser pointer to like highlight the crab cycle or whatever it's called on the wall, like a map of like different like cycles in medicine and or of the human body. And he would deliver everything monotone. He would tell me stuff like, you have Lyme disease, but like wouldn't really, when I was nearly crying in the appointments, wouldn't react to the fact that I was crying. So I think just having a sense of compassion, that remembering that there is a human at the other side of the table. When you are delivering bad news or when you're dealing with someone, it is so incredibly hard to be sick. And just like be compassionate. Remember that all the biology and anatomy you learn in medical school is important, but it's not always the most important part.
I feel like that's a really beautiful note to end on. Unless anybody has any last questions for Anna, I know we kind of have to let you go
comments
here.
or thoughts, or maybe just you know, saying thank you. Just if you can unmute yourself and say it, that would be wonderful. Also, neighbors, I'm sharing this link. I think especially today, it's really important. It's a little survey where you can share your thoughts. This is a new format for us, yeah, and it's an experiment, and we are always iterating and trying to find the best forms for this meeting. So please save this link and fill it in. And if you want to say something to Anna, we'll definitely pass it over through this form. This will be anonymous if you wanted to make it anonymous, yeah, or like whatever you want, however you want to express yourself and support us, and whatever ideas you have. This form is another way. Look, you can either just unmute yourself and say it, yeah, or you can go through the form as well, and this is really important to us.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here, Anna, and for sharing these pieces of your beautiful show with us. It was so fantastic. Yep, we have thank yous coming in through the chat. Yes, this is just fantastic. Thank you
so much.
Oh,
bye, everyone.
Wait a second. People say that this is private. Let's make sure that the form works. Chrissy, can you go and make sure that the form, that you can open the form?
Let me see here.
Yeah.
It is private.
Huh. Let's try and change it. I think especially today, it's really important that we kind of figure it out, and everyone
Thank you, Veronica. I just saw your comment. Thank you so much.
Can share it. Share. Publish.
Also, my like Zoom screen was like bouncing around for some reason. Like Chrissy, when you would ask me a question, it would bounce around. So I feel like my eyes in this recording are going to be like over to the side.
Yeah, I pinned your video. That's something to note. If you ever, neighbors, want to stay on one person's video screen, like when Anna was doing her show, you can click the three little dots in her upper right-hand corner and click pin video, and that will keep it on her.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. So I don't know why it's keeping it private. Maybe we can try another one. You guys, oh, maybe while I'm trying to figure it out, and whoever can say, you mentioned Edinburgh Festival, and I have a very personal special story, because Edinburgh Festival was the first place and first time I ever went abroad from Russia, and I was 17, and I was invited to work with this theater company. And imagine me like 17-year-old, and I was alone. I had to like go to Edinburgh and figure out the apartment for like, you know, go to the theater, make all arrangements. And this, of course, like blew my mind completely. Yeah, because this millions of theaters, shows, this. So I think this definitely like opened my mind forever. And then this going through this experience where you like every day you hang out flyers, and then you have shows. And then actually it started awful. We were robbed, and the show got like 2 stars, etc. But then like third week we got like really good reviews. We got the Fringe First Award, and we got Total Theater. So it ended up being a total success. And so this like roller coaster. So and this summer with Ali, we went to another awesome theater festival in France. Yeah, so there's like those are the two, and I think for anyone who loves theater, these two are just incredible. It's just such a special place. So can you talk a little bit about the Fringe for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was not prepared at all. Like I wish I would totally go back and do it over again, because it is an incredible undertaking. Like you have to, especially going as a one-woman show. I didn't have a theater company taking me, so I had to do all the marketing on my own and like that sort of thing, which was really challenging. I remember I brought my props in one suitcase. Our luggage got lost when we got there. I didn't get my luggage back for a couple of days, so I didn't have some of my props. Things went wrong in tech. Then all of a sudden they told me that like my insurance was never paid to have the spot to perform the show. So I had to figure that out last minute. Like every possible thing that like could have gone wrong went wrong. And also my time slot was 9:40 p.m. And what I didn't know about Edinburgh Fringe is that it's a bunch of people in 20s and their 30s, a bunch of people in their 20s and 30s who just want to like get drunk at night and watch comedy shows at that time. So it wasn't the right time slot. You know, it was a lot of things, but it was really a great experience learning how to like market yourself and learning how to really like hold your own and like really realize that sometimes out of 7,000 shows, you're going to have an audience of 5 and you just kind of have to roll with it. And, you know, the greatest thing though that happened is that I had 2 women show up, the only 2 people in the audience show up one day. And I was like, I guess I'm going to perform. And these 2 women said, we come to Edinburgh Fringe every year for the past 40 years to see only solo shows. And you were our favorite solo show we've ever seen. And I was like, this just made up for all these no audience nights that I had. And so that was really cool. But it's also just like, it's an amazing city to be in August. And I really hope they'll still have Edinburgh Fringe this year. I wonder what's gonna happen with that. But it was like New York City times 1,000, like Times Square times.
And all theater, yeah.
It's all theater, it's like all, and also what I thought of when I went there, I was like, oh my God, theater wasn't really cool growing up, but like you go to Edinburgh for the Fringe and like theater is the cool thing. And everyone thinks it's cool and everyone's performing on the streets. So yeah, it just gave me a really new perspective about like how many people actually come together for art. And it was really awesome. But it was also very stressful. It was such a stressful experience.
Whoever loves theater, I think either as a performer or as an audience should go to either Edinburgh or Avignon Theatre Festival, because this is just something completely different and out of this world. It's insane.
Did the form work, Fyodor? Did you get the form to work?
Yes, we do. We have the form working now. It's that last link in the chat for anybody that wants to click that. You can copy and save it for later, or you can go there right now. The link is working now.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if Edinburgh doesn't happen, then you already have some experience on Zoom with the show. So maybe it could just move to Zoom. But
I wish I could go to Edinburgh again. That'd be awesome. All right. Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, neighbors. We will see you next time. Hope to see you all on Monday at 2.
Yeah, the Zoom is working. The link is working now. So yeah, let us know.
All right.
Bye. Bye. Anna, thank you. It's so wonderful.
Are we staying in this Zoom?
We can. Whoever wants to stay.
I'll leave and then I'll rejoin your Zoom.
Okay, cool. Guys, don't forget about the link. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.